Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Hope y'all are doing well. And today we're doing some spell slingers, or talking about some spell slingers, more like it. Um, and It's been really nice. I took, I wouldn't say necessarily a break, but as I was figuring out what videos I wanted to make and was going kind of back and forth with some ideas, I finally did something I said I was going to do quite a long time ago, which was make an alt account, which I had for a while, um, and see how hard, how easy it was to get to Mythic. Just by, being on a team, requesting for some materials here and there. But, aside from a couple key cards, and I'll talk about, why I think those are pretty easy to get crafted and probably will carry you to Mythic, for especially the new players that have been joining the scene. But overall, I just wanted to see how it would feel to do it on a fresh account, and honestly got kind of motivated about it. And as you can see, we did hit Mythic. So today I'm going to talk to, any of the new players out there who are trying to figure their way through the game. And we've had a lot of buzz in our LGS Discord, which has been awesome. Really, the new players always like reinvigorate me, not just for like creating content, but just like hanging out with people, and it's just continued to be a great Discord that we have where we get to know each other and just chill like we are at the local game store down the block. Um, so, other than that, as always, I really appreciate your support, the likes, the subscribes, and the comments. And I know I've been behind on my videos, so thanks for bearing with me. And yeah, hope everyone's weekend's going well. So, without further ado, I think we'll just kind of go through the decks, the planeswalkers that I chose, why I chose them, and just generally kind of how I navigated the ranks. Figured I'd talk about the decks and what ranks they kind of carried me to, and where I wanted to switch things up and why. And as you can see, other than buying some daily packs, I've saved all my gems. I haven't spent a single gem, um, in the store or otherwise to buy any cards. And I've just gotten the daily packs basically over, I want to say it was like 6 or 7 total days that I sat down and played. So it just goes to show, like, if you know how to play the game pretty well, you know your matchups, you know pretty optimal deck construction. And it all depends on what you get in your packs. Like, really, even just having some daily packs, you can hit Mythic. So I ended up hitting it at level 21. Shout out to Bob, Boss of Blades, who continues to come up with some really excellent stuff for Spellslingers. He let me know that, an early, I don't know if it was a record, but Bucks Fu, who is the founding member of MTG SS, had been able to, I think, hit Mythic by level 23. So it felt good to kind of get there a little bit ahead of the curve. Not a huge competition. Honestly, the competition was with myself to see how hard or how easy it would be. So yeah, I should probably stop talking and just get into the deck. So you start out with Chandra, no secret there, right? And how do you kind of make Chandra work? For anyone who's familiar with Logan Thorne, who is a content creator for Spellslingers for quite a while, and we kind of worked alongside each other with different events and things like that. And I feel like the LGS has kind of taken on the mantle of what a lot of his community was doing, which is great because I really like that we keep doing tournaments and all of that. So actually, before I get too ahead of myself, today is July 22nd, which means the Mythic League tournament number 5 is rapidly approaching. So if you have not hit Mythic, please try and do that by the end of next week. So I'm recording on Saturday today, July 22nd. We'll be opening up the registration on Wednesday. I can count, but I'm going to look at a calendar right now. July 26th is when we'll open registration. And yeah, as long as you essentially hit Mythic by the 28th, which is that Friday, we usually close registration later on that day. So definitely, if you haven't joined the Mythic League tournaments, we'd love to have you. And feel free to join our Discord. I always have all the good info in the bottom of the description. So thanks so much. So, sorry, here we are. Chandra, what are we building? Why are we building it the way we are? So I started to talk about Logan Thorne. It's called the LT Classic for Logan Thorne Classic. Um, Basically, what Logathorn highlighted early on into playing the game was that green is a really great splash with red, specifically because green just tends to have just pretty good statted creatures, and you will see a theme of the planeswalkers that we chose to climb with, and the theme is green. I'll tell you now. And I switched some stuff around. This is the deck list as it ended up, like when I started to fill it out as I was playing, as I was opening packs, or like getting enough gold to buy the daily packs, stuff like that. Because we only did daily packs, and we didn't purchase any cards from the store with gold or with gems, and we just did requests. And then of course, like, you open chests as you win. So that was kind of, if you're winning a lot and you're opening your chests each week or each day or whatever, you get a good amount of not only materials, but just like cards and currency. So honestly, I feel like for being level 21, we ended up with like a pretty solid deck. I mean, we don't have the optimal land, but Active Volcano is totally fine. The top of our curve is a little weird. We've got like Wolfgar kind of hanging out for no reason. But the deck functions perfectly fine. We actually even hit the two-headed Hellhounds. Less good in Chandra, better obviously in Nahiri. I think I played Chandra basically until my first key that I was able to get. And that was probably from, and I started from the bottom, like 200 rating in bronze or whatever that is. And probably, I want to say around like maybe 500, 600, something like that, I was able to unlock something. And just based off how my packs went, when I was opening them, for those daily pack rewards and all of that in the beginning, I chose to play Nahiri because I opened a white aggro land. And so kind of my thinking is lands just have a ton of value, right? Because it's essentially a 31st card in your deck that costs relatively low, nothing, other than like sometimes it can screw you over, right? So that's the potential downside, but the upside is pretty huge. So I think my first tip, as a side note here, is when you're first starting the game and you're opening stuff, pay attention to the lands that you're opening. Eventually I got Active Volcano, I think, so I was like, oh great, I can put that in my Chandra list, or my Chandra deck, makes it a bit better. So probably picking planeswalkers that work with the lands that you open is a good strategy from the beginning. Now, the other kind of, tip number 2 is that you get these challenges, right? So for those who are also still learning the game, you get these challenges, right? And so this says complete 3 games with a Johnny, get a pack, right? So it would probably be beneficial for me, I'll just keep the list up while we're talking, to maybe get a key, to get a Johnny, to get that free pack, right? That's generally how you want to kind of min-max when you're first starting, is that if you can get a free pack by just like unlocking a planeswalker and playing some games with it, great. You're going to expand your collection for not a huge cost, because pretty much all planeswalkers can win games. Obviously there's, my tier list from April, which hasn't really changed, the top 3 decks being Nissa, Sarah, and Garruk. There's just not going to be a lot of variety when there's been no change to the game. But when you first start out, you just kind of want to min-max those rewards and grow your collection without having to, potentially invest that much. So those are just a couple tips that kind of came up as I was talking. But basically what this deck does, right, is it's got aggressive elements that are pretty clear. You've got your stat stick in Colonian Tusker and Spear Crown Stag, which can be great in an aggressive strategy. And then Grudge Match. I just love Grudge Match. You never want to 2-for-1 yourself with it, but when you kill something and your creature gets bigger and then you get to trade it for something else, it's just such an excellent card. And honestly, it's very key in a lot of matchups to have that early answer. And these other cards are fine. We've got our Flame Shot. I opened an Inferno pretty early. We've got like Fire Spout, Elemental, Cage Match just seemed like a cute one. Even Electro Alchemist, like, I would obviously rather be running any other haste creature, but like, it's totally serviceable. It's a 4-drop with haste. It dies, you get a spell. Like, I kind of wanted to show, like, this is not like an optimal build of Chandra, but this can win games for you. So the reason I pivoted off Chandra into Nahiri, and then we'll talk about the two other planeswalkers at the end, is that I think Nahiri, when I had the land, because I didn't have the volcano when I first started, when I opened a white land, we'll talk about that when we go to that deck list. I was like, all right, I should probably just maybe pick Nahiri because it is just probably the best aggro deck that uses white. Sorry, Gideon, you just haven't cut it since they nerfed you quite a while ago. So that's why I pivoted off, and I also just happened to open a lot of Nahiri pieces that were pretty decent. So that's kind of why I did that. But this is, I would say green splash with Chandra is great. Black splash can be good, but usually requires some rares or some epics and stuff like that. So I think this is just the most budget friendly and like competitive build that you can do of Chandra. So Nahiri, and I actually probably am missing, oh no, I did have the Hellhound. So I would say aside from like the second Hellhound and decorative armor, those were like two recent acquisitions. Like I took Nahiri probably from like 500 or 600 rating to about 1,000 before like I had another key or like kind of was looking for a change. So this is the land that I got, Training Yard, right? Starting turn 5, you have a chance to add a random white creature that costs 2 or less and give it +1/+1. And I just had a lot of these pieces, right? I had like one of the Hellhounds, which is excellent with Nahiri's passive, the +2/+0 sword. You get a ton of value from every single creature that you play. I still was running double Nahiri's Outburst because, and Shocks, because I didn't really have much that was that better. And although I wouldn't run this in like top tier, it totally gets the job done for the most part. Same thing, have the Inferno, the Electro, Alchemist, and then Decorative Armor was kind of a great addition, even without Barbarian class. I don't have any class cards in any of my lists because I haven't opened them. So, yeah, and she just makes use of like all these common creatures: Lingering Spirit, Elite Vanguard, Raging Goblin, Devoted Steed, Frontline Paladin, Iguana, Sword Cannoneer, Shortcutter. I mean, these like red aggro cards with a little bit of white kind of synergy, and you've got Core Recruit, which is an excellent card in the deck, and then Blitzing Minotaur as well. It's just so easy to throw together like a budget Nahiri list and just like crush with it, because especially because you're also getting the value from your land, which is perfectly starting at turn 5. You just get so much value out of your creatures. You really don't want to have a ton of spells in here. And then Will Smith, obviously just makes all of your Stone Blades better. And then Inferno just is just a really good value evasive red creature. And then Electro Alchemist I put at the top of the curve because cards like this are totally fine, right? It's a 2-for-1. You get to attack for 4. You trade with something, even if you're trading down, you get a random spell, and it's most of the time going to be useful. And haste creatures, as you might know with Nahiri, just tend to have a bit more value just for, ending the game. So yeah, this was such a solid aggro deck that really allowed me to go pretty far without having really much of anything other than the stuff I opened in the packs. And then I got the 2-headed Hellhound from a pack later on, which also makes this deck so much better because this is such a good threat. So that's kind of our aggro portion of the climb. Basically it's at this point I'm kind of looking at my collection saying, okay, do I want to keep playing Nahiri, or can I branch out, maybe complete some other challenges and stuff like that, and see where that takes me. And as per the winner, Marvin, of the Mythic League tournament number 4, I was honestly pretty interested in building Vivien. And I think I had a quest for green stuff too, and I was like, you know what? Let's see what I have for Vivien. Let me see if I can build something. It's also at this point that I say, okay, if I'm going to craft anything, what am I going to craft? Immediately, my first thing I wanted to think about was Death Shadow. I didn't really have a great crafting strategy, to be honest, going into this with my team. I had it in my mind it was either I wasn't going to craft anything and see how I got there, or I was going to be like very, very targeted with what I wanted to craft, which seems more realistic because, like, it's most of the time you're going to have a team that you can request materials, from. And I think I wanted to kind of say, like, okay, if I was going to craft like 3 cards, what would those cards be? And I'll tell you what those 2 are, and that is 2 Death Shadow and 1 Woodland Hermitage. And I'll definitely explain a little later why I did that. So what's great about Vivien is that you just, again, and why green I think is actually excellent for climbing, is that the cards are just pretty cheap and pretty good. And Vivien also loves to have a kind of wealth of 2-drops, because you can just basically use her ability every single turn when you have a bunch of 2-drops, right? It's turn 1, use your make an upgrade. Turn 2, play your 2-drop. Turn 3, play your 2-drop plus an upgrade, and then so on and so forth, right? Also, just having multiple cards you can potentially upgrade, right? Just like buffs your Beast Bonder, which is like such an excellent 2-drop. And for those who don't know, I have always loved Vivien. And the main influence was Boss MTG, who, is a rank 1 player and leader of MTG SS for, I think, a very, very long time. He had shared a build very early on when I joined in December of last year, and just really loved it. And I do have a little bit of an announcement. Some people already know. I did leave Team MTG SS. And joined one of the LGSs with my alt, and then one of the LGSs with my main. And I've just loved all my time at MTG SS, and really I still see those players talking, and they're around and stuff like that. I mean, Bob and Knight, we're both a part of that as well. And just, I got to meet them through that. Like, there's just so many people I've gotten to get to know, through MTGSS and all the stuff that they do. And Beyond Bounds has always posted my videos and like has been such a boon, to the game. So just as an aside, nothing really changes. Like, I'm still talking to those players and whatever else. I just kind of put a little bit more focus into supporting the Discord that we've been running together. And so, hats off to Boss MTG for sharing their Vivien list early on and saying, like, this is a really competitive planeswalker. It may not be the best like overall power level, but the play to it and the outplay potential to it has always been there. I also opened Adaptive Frillneck really early on, and I was like, okay, I love that creature in Vivien for a lot of reasons. I also hit Gluttonous Goo out of packs as well. And I had the Mist Ravens as well. So I just kind of was like, all right, we got plenty of green common creatures. We can utilize our signature cards pretty well. Let's just put it together. And it came together pretty seamlessly. Had the Hatchlings, the Archer, Tusker, Confuser, the Frillneck, Spike Baloth. I only have one Blighthope board, but the Gluttonous Goo, the Mist Ravens, the Briarhorn, and then some top end, and then I'll talk about the crafting. But she's just pretty easy to put together. She's very tempo based, which means like if you get ahead, you're going to stay ahead for the most part. If you're playing your cards right, quite literally. And yeah, sometimes you fight for the board and like you're a little bit behind, but there's comeback potential. And sometimes you spike the upgrade you need to win the game. And she just is very, very fun and beats up on most aggro and has really good play into most mid-range. Control, she'll definitely struggle with if she's not snowballing early. But you can have turns where like your Beast Bonder is like a 5/4 on turn 2, and then you just play like another 4/5 or something on turn 3. I don't have Tarmogoyf, I don't have any of these other cards that would probably benefit, or be like the best cards in the deck. And yeah, in the deck, basically, I played it straight from like 1,000 rating to 1,600 with like 0 issue. It was pretty rare that I dropped a game. Mistraven is insane. Most people don't really know to play around it. They're kind of setting up their board and they're like, oh, I've got one blocker to deal with like their threat, and then next turn maybe I'll do this, and then you just slam a Mist Raven, bounce their biggest thing, push through a bunch of damage, and it's just really easy to close out games if your opponent's kind of in those early ratings is probably not thinking about exactly how your deck is going to play out or accounting for some of these tempo based cards. So she's been really fun to play. I did end up deciding to play the final Planeswalker over her for a couple of reasons. So I'll talk about the crafting. Like I said, I kind of want to, if I was going to craft anything, I wanted it to be very like specific and like potentially under 5 cards. And we only crafted 3. And the 2 that we started with were Death Shadow. Why did I do that? For those who have been playing this game for a long time, you know that Death Shadow is an incredibly strong card. For people who are new, you might look at this and you're like, how is this card good? Also, why are you playing it in your Vivien deck? Like, is that actually good? And the answer is that this card is just a lot better. When you first look at this, obviously you're saying, okay, if you take a lot of damage, like you can play it ahead of curve. For any of the new folks, especially who've seen Davriel, he is the best enabler of this card, period, right? What Death Shadow allows you to do, though, in a Vivien's list like this, is if you get behind from aggro, Death Shadow saves you. Because Death Shadow is just such a good answer to aggro. It's also why aggro decks have gone down, I would say generally, since April, in popularity. Because it feels really bad to be pressuring your opponent to like 10 life, and then they slam a Death Shadow, and you're like, if I don't have unconditional removal, this thing is a huge problem for me. And what's really sweet about it in this deck, obviously you can give it upgrades, give it flying, trample, sneak, haste, all that good stuff. Animal Arrow can help tutor it up, right? So you can actually, even though this card has usually not seen that much play in like high tier Vivien lists, you can just like Animal Arrow on turn 3 or 4 and be like, oh, I'm behind, great, let me get my Death Shadow and then I'll play it the next turn. Also, it comes into play with an upgrade on it, right? So and I knew, I was like, okay, if I'm going to craft anything, like in terms of creatures, also Death Shadow is just the best creature to play. And it'll also make sense with the next Planeswalker I'll talk about as to kind of why I figured out I would do it if I wanted to hit Mythic quickly. And honestly, I did it a lot faster than I thought I would. So, who knows, maybe you don't even need to craft like anything at all. And right now, a shout out to Roxora, he's doing I think a no rare climb to Mythic, which now that he's doing that, I might have to do that because I feel like a bit of a wimp that I'm playing some rares and stuff, and did some crafting. But so I think that's really great that he's doing that, and I really appreciate his work. And then I said I crafted 3 cards. The third was Woodland Hermitage. It's just such an excellent green card. The next Planeswalker I'm going to talk about, I was not dead set on playing it. I was thinking about other green Planeswalkers that could make use of Woodland Hermitage, and also I did want to see if maybe I was going to take Vivien all the way, and Hermitage is like an essential part of that. And also I crafted all these Death Shadows for free. I requested material for like a week straight, and was able to just buy them both straight up. It was perfect. And same thing with Woodland Hermitage. So it didn't take very long to get like 3 what I felt was like essential cards. So to recap, we're going through a lot here, which is great. Feeling really energized about this. I stopped my Vivien kind of playing at, I think, around 1600 or 1700. Now, I know some people are going to be upset with me, and I get why. I chose Garruk as my final Planeswalker. And I say people might be upset is because for people who have been playing this game for quite a while, it's not that Garruk is necessarily the best deck, because I think we've expanded on Nissa and Sarah to deal with Garruk a bit more effectively. But in terms of like game time and power level, Garruk, I think, it's one of the you have quick games, number 1, so for climbing, obviously good. And number 2, power level just like is I think just the most kind of powerful, aggressive slash mid-range planeswalker. And so obviously Death Shadow fits very nicely into that. So does Woodland Hermitage. I got lucky and I opened a Kothafed. I opened the Gluttonous Goose. And then the rest kind of filled in. I opened the Detonators. Oh, sorry. I crafted 4 cards. I crafted 1 additional Channeler of Might, which honestly probably didn't need to. I just had the material, I think, while I was doing it. I was like, screw it. I'll do that. So it's kind of self-explanatory why I picked Garruk. The pieces kind of came together pretty easily. The games are just quick. And if you know how to play Garruk well, and I played a ton of Garruk when it came out because it was clear that he was the best aggro mid-range option to play. It made sense for me to do the rest of the climb with him. And boy, was it quick. Going from 1700 to 2K, I did that last night in an hour or something. Maybe an hour and a half. I don't even know if it was that long. Games were quick. A lot of the games were just decided pretty quickly, without a ton of counterplay. And even though this isn't the optimal Garruk list, it's just got plenty of things to do well. So let's talk about some of the budget options. So I only had 1 Detonator. Some people play Detonator in Garruk, some people don't. I think it's totally fine. But I had my Infectious Scorpions. Hatchling, which actually, shout out to Tino, was a kind of build that he was advocating for when Garruk first was released. And I think it's still a fine card. It's you don't really want to trade with it. And then you just get to give it, bonus attack from Garruk's passive. And then obviously you can grudge match something like a Death Shadow, right? And it kills it. So that's a pretty nice out to have. Baby Mammoth, shout out to Wushu. This was in his build of Garruk, I believe, for the last tournament for Mythic League, I'm pretty sure. And I kind of really like that, especially for budget. I don't know. I've always felt that this card was a little underwhelming. Even in Vraska, I was kind of does it really matter to have a 7/7 trample for 4? When you have to invest a pretty crappy 2/2 for 2 to do it. But I've kind of reevaluated that a little bit. And budget-wise, if you think about also the fact that the best answer to Garruk is control, then Baby Mammoth is a great, honestly, is a great option because you can make it a 3/1 or a 4/1 depending on your passive, right? It's gonna die, and then you get your 4/4 7/7 trample threat. So when you need more card advantage to beat out control, you need to continuously apply pressure with your threats. Baby Mammoth is actually a pretty great option. So shout out to Wushu for just being creative in that way. Spike Baloth, I think generally was not always played in Garruk, but it's a totally serviceable card. Bob and I were talking about it last night. It just kind of does what it needs to do for 3 mana. Wild Speaker's Fury, just the best unconditional removal spell in the game for green. And speaking of enabling Death Shadow, if you just want to use your life total, because Garruk has 27 health. I think if you were going to nerf Garruk, you should nerf his health. If you didn't want to touch the cards, which I think you probably should, because Veil Curse Predator probably should have been nerfed to some degree, I think. But, I think what people don't always realize is it's really hard for Gary to lose, Scary Gary over here, to lose to aggro because you've got 27 health and you've got removal and you've got card advantage and you've got big statted creatures. And I think it's really hard to deal with the variety of threats that Garruk has. And the fact that he gets this unconditional removal spell that either enables Death Shadow or just isn't a cost because your health is so high. Wild Speaker's Fury just is really, really incredible. I had 1 Silent Strike. It's always been good in Garruk. 1 Flagrant Foul, I think, was in Tino's list when he was playing Garruk 2 Mythic League tournaments ago. Or maybe the last one. It all blurs together these days, folks. Sorry. But I actually liked the 1 Flagrant Foul. I thought that was a nice addition. Gluttonous Goo has just always been an absolute powerhouse in the deck. And Cruel Flagellant, shout out to Tino. This was an addition when he was playing Garruk for that tournament. And, you know, it's a common. It's really easy to get, and it's just Value City. Comes in as a 5/1 trample. Obviously, it's going to trade or die to something. It comes back as a 5/6 trample. It's just such a headache for your opponent most of the time, unless they can win the race. And the work that you can do with very little mana with Garruk, it's pretty hard to race him. Veil Curse Predator, obviously just always an all-star. And got lucky, opened the Kothafed, which is just one of the best threats, again, for Garruk. So, you know, to kind of sum it all up, I feel a little bit bad for playing Garruk, who just has kind of notoriously been such a strong Planeswalker. But part of me was like, look, you know, if I want to hit Mythic really, really quickly and I want to do it efficiently, you know, and as effectively as possible, I think that Garruk is a great option. You just get these green, you know, reasonably static creatures, they get better, and then you get access, you know, if you're lucky enough, to some really great, you know, black epics or rares or whatever. And it's just really easy to put together this deck, you know, without doing anything. Like I said, I only opened the daily. I basically would do the daily pack whenever I could. No gems spent, no coins spent aside from the daily pack. And I have a pretty serviceable Garruk deck here with 4 total cards crafted. So yeah, just obviously went really quickly from 1700 to 2K, and we hit Mythic. You know, essentially with like 6 or 7 sessions sitting down and playing for like an hour or 2 hours. So honestly, probably could optimize it even further. I'm also curious to maybe just not do any crafting at some point, because I think that's kind of at this point, you know, I like fun challenges like that with the game because I've been playing for so long. So I hope that this video is helpful, especially for the new players, of like how to min-max what you're doing, what are some different approaches to deck building and stuff like that. For the old players, a lot of this you already know, but you know, I hope that this video was kind of fun just to kind of see, get a glimpse of how the challenge went, you know, what builds I went with and why. I was even talking with Karma, you know, and he was saying, you know, like Kiora is a great deck to maybe even climb with too. Like, I think there are so many options. Sorin, honestly, as a starter deck, pretty strong, because again, any deck that gives you access to drafting cards that are outside of your collection is going to be a net positive for you. Same with Vraska. Kiora just makes really good work of not having a value land. So yeah, there's just like so many ways to play the game, or like to optimize on the game, and this was kind of just one approach. But you know, I hope it was kind of helpful to see. So as reminders, as we wrap up today, Mythic League tournament number 5 coming up. So we would love to see folks turn out and you know, join the MTG LGS clan. We have 2 clans now. So there's Clan 1, which has my alt, funnily enough, and Clan 2, which has my main, LongTim. Obviously, I had to keep it the theme with Longer Tim. It's just kind of the brand at this point. So other than that, I'm going to try and come up with some other content, you know, over the next few weeks, and keep updating the channel as I can. Not going to lie, I've been a little bit more motivated to do that, with some new folks coming through and, you know, really wanting, to have more, insight into the game. That's not stuff that I did months ago. So, other than that, I appreciate your time. Always like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks.